Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be talking about reporting and analytics for Oracle HR and what are your options. Presenting today will be myself, Shannon Krebs, and I'll be introducing my colleague, Neil McLean. For my background, before joining Insight, I actually worked at Oracle for about 15 years. I did several things there. I was a buyer in the purchasing department. I worked on our training organization, teaching around the world, and also spent some time in development in our trading community architecture, as well as Oracle Public Sector Financials International Group. And that's before joining Insight Software as a product strategy and marketing person, where here I focus on what our customers require as well as what they need. Neil?
My name's Neil McLean. I'm a management accountant. I was formerly an Insight Software customer, and I'm the product manager for Insight Unlimited. In my career over the past 10-11 years, I've worked on Oracle eBusiness Suite, both 11i and R12. I started off in finance department and moved over to IT. So I did about 5 years in finance and 6 in IT, and I was involved in an R12 upgrade project and also supporting the business on eBusiness Suite.
Great, thanks. So Neil, today we're going to talk about a few things here. The first are trends in HR and analytics reporting, so what we've been seeing out in the marketplace, the current challenges that exist within Oracle, what are your options, and again, in summary, why it's a good idea to take a look at this now. So some of the things regarding trends are, there's some interesting statistics we found while looking out and doing research on why we were going to be developing this module. Insight's been around for quite some time, and we have a foundation in financials reporting, but we've really seen that there's been a lack of information around HR analytics in the marketplace. And the interesting reasons behind that are that HR systems are usually not able to provide sufficient data. Deloitte did a study recently, and they said that only 14% of HR organizations are actually using advanced or predictive analytics out there. And a lot of that has to do with inability to access information, be able to get to it quickly, and really feel that information there is reliable. And as a result, HR ends up ranking at the bottom of organization groups that actually use analytics. And of course, finance is on the top. So while finance has been great about accessing data in the system, being able to publish reports to understand my business, HR has just been a laggard in this area. But as we now have access to more information and it's easier to get to, HR is really coming up in the area of wanting to understand not just the people in my organization, but what are the trends that are there and what's been happening.
So it's good to hear that the HR department are now recognising that they're behind the curve on reporting and analytics, and they're wanting to address this problem. What's the market position on HR analytics?
Interesting you should ask, Neil. So there actually have been a lot of studies done out there on what people are looking for and the challenges they're facing. This was a great study done about driving HR impact in a changing world, talking about challenges people face with accessing their data. Some of the ones that I wanted to highlight here are connecting multiple data sets. So often you've got different systems that capture HR information. You might be wanting to pull this information together, and that can be a struggle. A big problem is changing metrics as the business changes. So it can often happen where you might be implementing some kind of analytics or reporting system, and you've come up with a set of questions you want, but the metrics are changing. You need to be able to respond quickly as your organization's needs change, but sometimes it's not as easy to do that. Also, getting the right metrics. So often we can think we're asking one set of questions that we think will give us the answers we need, but that's not actually what we should be looking for out there. Also, mapping data to multiple organization structures. Even though we often like to think we're one organization, there might be different structures within different parts, be it different divisions, different locations. And so trying to understand that information and make it relevant and comparable to all groups. And then finally, taking all this information and putting it into data-led stories. So really taking data and turning it into real insights. So once we've got these main challenges here, it really comes down to two questions. Do we have the right information? So am I capturing the right information in my system? And then once I have access to that information, do I know what it means? So on top of all of that, even just trying to get to this information, organizations are spending over 850 hours on average every year just trying to get HR reporting out of their system. And the majority of that time is really spent on administrative ad hoc. So before I even have a chance to get to my strategic level of information I want to get out of my system or the ability to allow me to make better decisions, it's just trying to get standard information out of my system. And it really is a struggle to get to this today.
So Shannon, it's been my experience when I was working in the IT department that the HR users are very good at the functional HR areas, but generally don't have the skill sets required for reporting. And I often find that perhaps that they're not best placed to do the reporting. Is this what the industry average is?
Yep, and that's what we're finding all the time, actually. And what happens is that more than 60% of HR organizations have to rely on IT to get the information they need. But there are some real issues with that in terms of first having to rely on another group. That means you're often not a priority. You might not have the technical skills you need to access that information. And then also you're asking another group out there to access information that is probably sensitive and confidential that you don't want people to be looking at. So some real struggles with trying to just make sure I'm getting the right information and then being able to report on it effectively. So, let's talk about some of the challenges that come along with, getting your HR data out of Oracle.
Yeah, so I've obviously worked in the whole IT side of the role, and I've also assisted an HR department when they were generating new reports and looking at overhauling their reporting needs. And the first big issue that we sort of came across is Oracle HR is actually quite complicated around security. In release 12, the security is dynamic. So when a user logs in, it caches which people in assignment records they're allowed to see. And as entries are entered when that person's logged in, the cache is updated sort of dynamically. Now this can cause a number of issues if you're looking at a data warehouse solution or some of the third-party solutions that don't replicate security out of the box. And what happens with tools like OBIEE, where you don't get the security, even in OBIEE you don't get the security out of the box, is you'll have to spend substantial time rebuilding security to mirror what you've got within eBusiness Suite. And you also find that HR is always the bottom of the list because of this security. People in IT department don't always get access to the report, so the custom reports can take longer to get customized and developed, and you usually end up with some external costs getting involved with that as well.
So it sounds like security is probably one of the first issues people are looking at when they're trying to access their data.
Yep. Data protection is definitely a big issue. It's something that's really important. It's a legal requirement to protect people's data, and the HR department like to keep that data restricted down, and IT shouldn't have access to it. Now this sort of generates one of the big problems in that HR needs reports, IT usually build the reports, and that's a sort of mismatch when they don't have that access. So HR lose the ability to get that quick one-off SQL generated report when they're looking for new Discoverer reports or new customized forms to generate reports. That's often done by IT, but it's very difficult for that to happen when IT don't have the relevant access to validate the data.
No, that sounds like it could be difficult. So let's talk about what people's options are when it comes to trying to get to this information then.
Well, I think one of the obvious options is BI Publisher. It comes inbuilt with Oracle eBusiness Suite, and a lot of people were expecting in release 12 that the standard Oracle reports would come out in XML Publisher, so that they could pull them off in PDF, Word and Excel. But the reality is a lot of the standard reports are still in the old text format, where you had to use third-party tools to convert the reports into something usable. I mean, let's just take Excel for example. You take one report and you can spend over an hour just trying to put it into columns and rows. The layouts were never that intuitive and were always really difficult to use, and that hasn't changed. So BI Publisher can be used on top of those standard reports to make it more usable. BI Publisher is sort of advertised as an end user tool, and I have used it, but unfortunately I didn't feel although it was an end user tool, especially if you need to add in a field that's not within the standard view object file, which is what the BI Publisher uses to generate the SQL required within the report. You're then talking about really expensive third-party consultant costs to come in and customize those files, and again that's a customization that you need to track within your system. As a result of it having to go through the IT department, you end up with the IT change management process. Now obviously that's a necessary process because the IT department don't have the functional business knowledge. The HR functional administrators, they have that knowledge, so there has to be documents to record that transfer of information, that transfer of knowledge, to ensure that the reports are developed to meet the requirements. But as a result, business isn't actually static, it's more dynamic, and business reporting needs can change hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And if you're writing out one of these MD50s or technical documents to say this is what we need as a business process, how do you know what's going to happen in a month or a year's time? It's impossible. So you end up writing out a document that takes forever, it gets developed, it gets tested, it goes into production, and then you realise actually now that I've started using it, we need this other field as well, and you have to go through the whole process again. So very lengthy, very costly, probably not my number one option.
Great. So I remember when I was at Oracle and we were moving to Release 12, we thought all of the new reports were going to be in BI Publisher and it would be easy for us all to use. But it sounds like that's probably not the case now. So the next option people always talk about is, looking at Discoverer.
Yeah, absolutely. I used Discoverer for many years, and I was actually involved in both training an HR department and seeing somebody else train an HR department. And although they're excellent at the HR side of things, the tables and fields can be confusing in Oracle eBusiness Suite. They're not always intuitive. The data structures are complicated. A lot of the tables are date tracked, which is another functionality that to look at when looking at reporting options, and that you need the ability to be able to say I want to see the records at a particular point in time. Maintenance of the end user layer in Discoverer can be quite difficult. It's although often seen as a sort of drag and drop tool, it's really not. Joining tables together can be complicated. And the big nail in the coffin for Discoverer is that Oracle are de-supporting it as of June 2015. They've already given notice that people should be moving away from it.
Right, and what they're asking people to move to is, of course, OBIEE.
That's right. And OBIEE definitely has a place within business. It's really good at providing the web platform. It's got the dashboards there, but it takes a long time to implement. It's expensive to get the developers in place to develop out the reports you need. And once they're developed, they're static. And also a lot of the times it's built on top of a data warehouse. OBIEE is designed for a data warehouse. Now one thing you can do is you can buy OBIEE, which is pre-packaged content designed for eBusiness Suite. But again, it just never quite meets the mark. It doesn't have security built in out the box. It's data warehouse, so it doesn't do your transactional real-time reporting. And again, if you want that report changed once it's built, you're talking about getting a developer in. It's not an end-user process, so it's not really a day-to-day reporting tool. And a lot of our customers actually coexist between OBIEE and our product. They use both at the same time. And we find that quite widely across the board.
Great. So how about looking at third-party options out there?
I think the key thing when you're looking at third-party options is to identify what's important to your organisation and use that as a set of filters, a set of criteria that can reduce the number of options that you have to look at. I mean, ideally you want to look at each product in detail, but if you're starting off looking at 50 products, then you're never going to be able to do that. So I would say think about how important security is. You've heard us talk about the complications around security, and not every product will have out-of-the-box security. So do you want to spend 3 to 6 months rebuilding your security in another product? Probably not. You're probably looking for a solution that you can get up and go with. So that's definitely one that should be up the top of your list. Another thing to think about is how often do you need to answer the business questions, like ad hoc reporting. If you need to have a dynamic structure that allows you to build reports on the fly, rerun reports as often as you need, and get live up-to-date reporting, then perhaps a data warehouse isn't for you. Perhaps something that you need a lot of technical development to build out the end user screens isn't for you. You should be looking for something that's a bit more drag and drop, a bit more end user focused, something that can take the pressure away from your IT department and also be intuitive for the HR functional analyst to use. And it's also worth thinking about, do you need to drill down in data? Will you be looking at a lot of summarized information that you'll be looking to validate, or you'll be wanting to drill down to get further analysis? Drill down can be quite complicated. When you think about Discoverer, not many people built drill downs because how complicated it was to implement. So again, you want to be looking for a tool that allows you to do drill down really quickly and easily without IT intervention.
So thanks, Neil. I think looking at third-party solutions do make a lot of sense, and it's one reason why we're here today. We think you should take a look at insightsoftware.com. And one reason is we have a proven track record. We've got over 1,000 customers in finance today, and they're all built on these golden rules, our foundation of how our software is built and how we work as an organization. The first thing that's really key is everything we do is fast. In terms of implementation, it's really more like an installation. You can have Insight up and running within an hour, within a day in your organization, and you're ready to go. And that'll give you automatic access to all of your information. So we have pre-built content for HR in terms of being able to quickly access the data and be able to start creating reports and getting some real analytical information out of your system right away. It's easy to use, so it's actually built for end users. The idea of having to go through an IT department to access your information, as we've mentioned before, it really can be a blocker in what you want to get to. Our software is built for your business users and HR to be able to go through, create their inquiries right away, and most importantly, it's on demand, so it's going to be real time. They'll be able to pull queries out, be able to get the information, know it's accurate, and in real time. And a great thing about it as well is with HR data, we can also look back in time and see what was happening at a particular point, which we found is one of the big struggles people have today when getting their information out of Oracle. So there's no data warehouse or anything to have to consider.
So I found that when I was a customer of Insight Software, that the accountants absolutely loved the product, and it was for these very reasons. It was real time. They could get those ad hoc inquiries just there and then without any IT intervention. It was literally drag and drop to build reports, and they cut hours and hours off their month end. And I can see the same thing happen in HR now that we've got the HR module out. Previously we'd seen the slide about the 800 hours a year on ad hoc analysis, and now we're going to be able to cut that down significantly by allowing the HR functional analysts just to be able to go in and develop their own reports without any major IT skills.
So in summary, we think that people in HR should be able to access their data and really own that data.
That's right, and I think it makes sense because the HR department, they're the ones that really care more than anyone else about the information that's in the HR system. They're the ones that have got the functional knowledge and they can be able to interpret that HR data to turn it into proper reports. And when the business come asking to get a business problem solved, the HR functional analyst is the one that's going to have the best set of skills to be able to answer that question, as long as we give them the right tools to be able to answer the question. And as soon as they start to develop and build their own set of analytics and reporting, the increasing the likelihood of them using those reports, and you're not building stale reports anymore because the HR person's able to build and adapt the report to work as they adapt, and as the business is dynamic over the years, they'll be able to adjust those reports to meet those changing business requirements.
So thanks everybody for joining us today. If you want to learn more information or even see insight running on your own data, please drop us a line. We'd be happy to give you more information. Hope to hear from you soon.